New Zealand would have to be one of my favourite places in the world. It has such varied and unique environments, so I thought it might be fun to feature a few locations from across the pond every so often. First up is a fairly well-known location in Punakaiki on the west coast of the South Island. Here you'll find what's called the Pancake Rocks, the name obviously referring to the stacked-like appearance in the rocks here. This particular type of appearance is known as Stylobedding and is thought to have formed as a result of the alternating thin bands of limestone and muddy limestones. These rocks are thought to have formed 22 to 30 million years ago during the Oligocene, making this formation the youngest one I've discussed so far. It's likely there would have been a shallow sea environment here at the time, and that shells, corals, limestone, and other sediments would have been deposited on the seafloor over a long period of time. This would have been occurring when the New Zealand landmass was mostly submerged due to being in a passive tectonic environment for a time. The formation of stylobedding is still being debated, but what's thought to have created this unique look is a mixture of compression and weathering. The deposits that eventually formed this limestone would have experienced a mild degree of compressional pressure as further sediments and debris built up on the sea floor. This compression is thought to have created alternating stronger and weaker limestone bands through a process called grain boundary diffusion. Check my sources in the description if you want to read more about this process, but essentially the calcite in the muddy limestone bands ended up being riddled with impurities, making it much more susceptible to weathering and erosion. This is in contrast to the calcite in the stronger bands, which have all been aligned in a particular fashion and have less impurities. When these limestone rocks were eventually uplifted, they were then exposed to both coastal erosion and chemical erosion. The constant battering of the wind and waves and exposure to salt water and rainwater have shaped both this coastline and these rocks. As previously mentioned, the calcite in the muddy limestone bands is more susceptible to these processes, and on top of that, these bands also have a high amount of clay and other minerals which are also more susceptible to weathering and erosion. As a result, the muddy limestone layers have been eroded away, while the stronger limestone bands have remained relatively intact. Limestone has some very unique structures and formations that result from physical and chemical weathering and erosion. The pancake rocks at Punakaiki are a great example of stylobedding, and it's no wonder that this area is so well known and frequented by sightseers.